Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Data Standard Audio Experience. Today on our show, we have Cameron Gilmore, the Director of Sales and Analytics at Blue Fire Leads. And today we're speaking more about data inspiration. And I'm so excited to get to know you better and hear more about the work that you're doing. So welcome to the show, Cameron. It's so great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I love talking about analytics and data, especially how we can inspire people. So yeah, I've got, it's something I've been doing for years now. So I'm excited to share a little bit of knowledge.
Yeah, definitely. And we're so excited to have you today. And let's just get started. Could you tell us more about your background and go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Cameron. My full name is Cameron Little Wolf Gilmore. I'm half Navajo and half Scottish. Personally, I've been remarried for 6 years, so we have a total of 10 kids. We're a blended family. I have 3 grandkids. Professionally, I've been in lead gen now for 14 years. I've been in building out call floors and sales floors for the last 16 years, and I've off and on owned and operated some companies. So, and I've used analytics to make the best decisions. Obviously, you can get a gut feeling and get inspired, but analytics are always going to tell you and drive good, bad, or indifferent. So I'm a big fan, a big nerd, if you will, when it comes to analytics, because the data always tells the story. I just want to make sure it tells the right story. So that's a little bit about background about myself.
Yeah, great. And how does data inspire you in the work that you're doing and just everyday life?
That's a great question. So right now I'm building out a call floor, and it's primarily with kids that have never had any sales background, zero. Most of them are in college. And so what I use is the analytics to understand how to inspire them so they not judging their daily work based off numbers or sales or appointments, but they're able to see measurables throughout the day or throughout the week and out the month. And we've been very successful in building out these floors by using the data to inspire them to say, look, let's look at the long-term growth and not this short-term micro growth, but let's look at this bigger picture. And we'll use little tips and techniques that we have over the years to just help them get confidence, gain confidence, and ultimately, help them grow personally is what we're focused on first. Grow them first personally, grow them professionally.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I wanted to also transition and talk about specific projects that you've worked on. So what is a particular project that you have worked on that involved data, and what was the outcome like?
Yeah, perfect. Let me do this. I'm going to share my screen here.
Yeah, go ahead.
And you'll be able to look at this because it ties perfectly what we're looking at. So this, if you're looking at here, so this is the data that we use, right? I look at this. This was start to finish. So this was a rep that we brought in. She was never in sales, just saw this ad, was wanting to come part-time. And so this is, you can see the steady growth of her progression, if you will, as a salesperson, but more person as personal development. So June and July, you can see May, June, all through June, all July, kind of subpar, if you will. Most traditional call floors or sales floors would have moved her off and said, hey, thanks for coming. This is not your gig, and have that revolving door. But there was one key element that I knew that if we could help this individual overcome, it would change the scope and the lens and the picture of what we were doing. So down here where it says not interested, the not interested rate, you can see as this mountainous increase, right? Good for stocks, not good for sales, but you can see it increase, and we're like, okay, so right in here, she hit a 58%. So almost 60% of the people that she was talking to were saying they were not interested, which is not true. People are not interested. We just haven't given them enough reason to continue with the conversation. So what we did was we focused on reducing the non-interest rate. And we knew that as we could reduce the ability for her to not take the first rebuttal or the second or even a third, but just go into it and say, listen, we're not gonna listen to this. So we looked at this on a very, very high level and said, okay, how does she stack up with everybody else? Well, you can see everybody else kind of was in that same bucket of all these big, huge not interested rates. So what we did is we we pulled everybody off the phones and in groups, and we ran them through what we called advanced training, which really was training to help them overcome simple objections. Again, remember, we were dealing with people who never sold anything in their life, and we're like, look, you can't take them at face value when they say they're not interested. It really is, we just haven't given enough reason to continue with the conversation. So the green line here is where this rep is, and you can see she's sitting about almost 45% not interest rate. So we focused on that. Every day we did daily measures. We said, listen, of 10 calls, if we can do 10 calls and we can reduce it to your not interest rate, let's do 3 out of those are actually not interested. Let's just focus on that. So we actually went old school and did these little tally marks. So they had the pad of paper and they did tally marks, and they said, of the 10 calls, how many of them actually said they were not interested? And as this growth, this trend started happening, it started to come down and come down. We'll go back to the main point. You can see right here, it went from 50%, dropped to 30%, 37%, 18%. And what happened was, as we focused on her, giving her the ability to feel confident and feel comfortable on the phone, but not listening to what the person was saying, but using the data, you can see her sales jumped up dramatically over the course of weeks and over the course of months. And actually, she ended up being my top rep week over week because we focused on one little thing, but inspired her to become better personally. So if we look at the June report, that's great, but let's look at the September report. You can see the September report, it was at 11%. So June, July, August, September, October, I mean, you can see over a 4-month growth period, we reduced it from almost 60% down to 11%. And what it did is it inspired her to become better every single day. We helped her focus on not taking the not interested at face value, but building on that, and everything else just shot. You can see here, she scheduled 50 appointments in 1 week. Now, most people are like, well, that's not very good. But here's the thing, they're part-time. They work 5 hours a day, 5 days a week. So if you do the math, it's simple. That's 10 appointments per day from somebody who's never had any sales experience at all and should have been moved out the door. But because we didn't take it as face value, we didn't look at it, the data, and said, all right, let's look at the negative side. We looked at it and said, how can we inspire? How can we grow? How can we learn? But what you can see is the trend, not only from her, but everybody else, because we needed a rabbit to chase. And this is the second point, right? So first thing is inspire to be better. The second thing is you need a rabbit. Somebody has to be the rabbit that everybody's chasing, right? Alice in Wonderland, the good one. Follow the rabbit down the hole. Alice wanted to chase it. So we needed a rabbit. And the rabbit was this rep. And we showed her week over week, the progression that she was making. Everybody else around was like, we want to do what she's doing. How can we do what she's doing? And essentially what happened was this progressive growth that inspired all the reps around her. So people were like, can I sit next to her? Can I listen to her? So then we were able to strategically move reps from where they were sitting to where they would sit by her and they would listen to her. And they're like, she's not saying anything, there's nothing that she's saying different than me. But what it was the tonality. So then we focused on the tonality but you won't see that in the data, but we focused on the tonality because that's what helps overcome the not interested. And so as we were able to do this, the floor grew better, the reps grew better over time. This was more of a trend. And so if you look at it, we started this floor from nothing, right? And in 9 months, we added $34 million top end to one of our biggest buyers. So we did that again with 97% of the people that we brought in were college students with no sales background. And we just changed a little bit, changed the mindset. That's the key thing. The third thing you want to think about is the mindset. How do you change the mindset? The data is great. And the problem with data is you can get so ingrained in the data that you forget that you're dealing with human beings, right? The human mind needs to be inspired. And how do you inspire it? You change the mindset. So personally, and we helped her personally develop. Then we gave her tasks, small measurable tasks every day. Then we helped her change the mind. And the growth was amazing. The experience was great. They had a lot of them moved on from where we started, which is fine. We're duplicating this process now, and we're in the same project. So it's been great to see the data be able to use it, inspire, as opposed to the adverse, which is the negative effect of, hey, you're gone, we're sending you out the door. So there's a project that we did that we worked on, and it thank goodness it worked out well for everybody.
Yeah, and it's so interesting for for viewers seeing this over the video portion. It's very interesting to see everything visualized here, and it's very clear that this person that you had mentioned who was working part-time was really improving over time as time was going by, and just the interest rate was going up, and the not interesting rate is going down. So it's really interesting to see all the numbers and everything just laid out here. And with a lot of the work that you're doing, or a lot of the work that your colleagues might be working on, there must be a lot of challenges that come with analyzing the data. So what is a particular challenge that you have encountered that you'd like to talk about?
So the biggest challenge in analyzing data as it is, right, is making sure that you can put the data in a picture that tells a story, right? I'm really old school when it comes to data. So I still use pivot tables through Excel. I know there's a lot of systems out there that I can throw all the data in and it will tell me the story. The problem is if you don't map out the data properly, what you're going to get is you're going to get bad reports. And that was one of the biggest challenges that we had at the very beginning, was understanding how to map it. Because when you're dealing with humans that are in a space that they're not familiar with, right? They're not used to selling, and they're not used to talking to people on the phone, that you have to understand the data. You have to understand how we're building on the measurables. So let me go back to June real quick. So all of this is kind of, it's kind of a baseline with, call centers and salespeople. How many calls did they make? What was the average talk time? Which was, how many calls, how many D&Qs did not qualify? Why did they not qualify? What were they not interested? Were they really not interested? Did it go to voicemail? So all of this data is just floating out there, and you can download these reports depending on whatever dialer, whatever calling system you have. But the biggest problem was being able to take all this and understand it from a perspective of, when you're dealing with professionals who have years of call center experience or sales experience, they already know the measurables. They already can see the measurables. One of the biggest challenges that we ran into was putting the data in a situation to where we could see it and grow it and measurable it. And that took time, because we started this call for, go back to the May, we started this back in May and June. So we went an entire month that we did not have measurable or quantifiable data that could tell us the real story. And it's hard because you're going off of past history, you're going off of past experience, but when you're tweaking and changing, it's almost, you're doing it on a day-to-day basis. So a lot of the data we had at the very beginning, it was horrible data. It was really bad, in the sense that some days the calls were really good, some days the calls were really bad, some days they talked to a lot of people, some people they didn't. Sometimes we were using live or brand new leads, and sometimes we were using old leads, and all of that was just being compiled in, and there was no way for us to really take all that and say, all right, we got to build it. And we made some bad decisions probably the first 3 weeks in growing out the sales floor, and that's on us, right? That was mine. We let go of some people that we should not have let go, because once we had the right data, it took about 2 months to really get that data. We're like, oh crud, maybe this person was actually on a right trend, and we jumped the gun on it. But and that's just how you learn, and you can't be afraid to make the mistakes, right? The biggest problem that I've seen over the 20 plus years that I've been doing business is people are afraid to make the wrong decision because of the data. Well, you're not going to know until you know, especially if you go into an unknown space or an unknown field. You have to just let the data kind of work through itself. And it's easier to say, well, you're not dealing with, I was dealing with 30, 40 call reps at a time. They all had hourlies, they all had commissions. We were paying for software, for seats, for overhead, for electricity. You name it. I knew what I had to cover every day. And so the one thing I can say is don't be afraid Don't be afraid to venture out, get outside of the data analytical box, which is you're just sitting in it looking at it. We were looking at it from a very granular level. And when we pulled back 30, 40,000, 50,000 feet, we were able to see, oh man, we need to let go of this person. But this person, that my example here, we were like, if she could just change a few things, then we would see that growth. And it was that exponential growth, which was fantastic. So that was the one thing that if I could do better, I would let the data kind of bake longer and not make such rush decisions.
Yeah, definitely. Great explanation. And what advice, for my final question, what advice do you have for someone who may be interested in a field similarly to yours in the intersection of sales and analytics?
So my biggest advice is this. Listen, if you're afraid to fail, you're probably not going to be good at sales. That's 100% honest. I'm going to be brutally honest with you. If you come into a sales space and you're afraid to fail, it's the wrong space for you. Go do something else. But if you come in this and you have this openness of, I want to learn and I want to grow, and I want to know what are the metrics or what do I need to do better daily on a day-to-day basis. So first thing I would do is this. I would look at your day. If you're full-time, then you're going to break up your days into three parts of the day, right? The morning, the mid-afternoon, and then the late afternoon. And then you are going to look at your day and you're going to break it up and say, I get into work and I work from 9 to 5 or from 8 to 4, whatever it is. So you're going to break it up into 3-hour increments when you first start. The first reason you're going to do this is you're going to basically say, I have 3 days into one day. And the first day is we're going to look at all those measurables and we're going to write down what worked and what didn't. And then you're going to get up and take a break. And then you're going to take that second half of that day and you're going to go through those measurables, not the morning measurables, but these are different measurables. And then the last part of the day is you're going to look at the third measurable, because humans go through these emotions, right? The first part of the morning, they're alive, they're awake, or they're just trying to pants. Mondays are always different than Fridays, because Fridays at 12 o'clock, everybody thinks it's 5 o'clock and they're ready to go home. So you have to start to understand the people that you're going after, the clientele. So when is the best time to call? When are people most alive? When they're most energetic? You can get that report from your analytics, your IT guys. Say, hey, listen, can you run a report to me and see when do we have the most sales? When do we book the most sales? And I'm going to tell you this 3 times. There's going to be between 9 and about 11:30, 9 to 11. Doesn't matter the time zone, Eastern, Central, Mountain, or Pacific. So about 9 to 11:30. Then there's going to be this other time. It's going to be right in that 12:30 to maybe 1, 2 o'clock. There'll be a better time. And then there's this little small sliver, which is about 3:30 to 4:30. Those are going to be, statistically speaking, those are going to be the best times. Now, there's all these studies that out there will tell you that's not true. I'm telling you, I've been in the day-to-days for a long time, and those 3 times are going to be the best times. So once you find out what the actual times are that it works the best for you to booking, then you need to figure out, okay, I can map my day around the times that are best calling. So I'm MIC, I'm productive, and I'm calling. What you then have to figure out is the other times that are not good at calling, how do I fill that time? Market analysis, research, podcasts, listening, going through personal development, going through growth, sitting down with the top reps and saying, can I listen to what you do? Can I follow your process? What is your process? Every good rep, every top end rep is always going to have a process they follow. And it's a simplistic process. They do probably 3 to 5 things every single day. And it's like clockwork. They're a machine. So you sit down and you watch what they do, and then you mimic what they do for a first little bit, and then you tailor to what meets your personality, right? Some people are super energetic. Some people like to be laid back. But at the end of the day is if you can continue to grow based on different metrics and the data, that's the biggest thing. The data is always going to tell you. So you first find out when are all the bookings happening? When are the best times to close? Second thing is when do we not? When is the worst time? When is the worst time to actually call somebody? And that you can get all that data and they'll be able to tell you and say, okay, so now you have 2 good measurables. Best times to call and close, worst times to call and close. And then there's that big, huge spot. It's kind of the unknown. And that's the part that should excite you. That's the part that say, if I know that the best times that I can close, that's when all the closers are closing. Let's say they're closing 10 deals a day. And of that, they're broken up into 3. So then what you got to do is, so I'm going to be given 10, which is easy because if I call within these times, I should get, 7 to 10. The goal and the challenge and the pursuit is closing it and going after the times that's the unknown time, and creating that time. And that's how you will excel in this space, is being able to do things out of the norm, closing business when it's traditionally not good to close. I'm talking about the worst times. I'm talking about the unknown times. And that's the game that you should play for yourself, right? So always develop personally. If you don't know where to start, pick up the book called The Traveler's Gift by Andy Andrews. It's the best book. I've done personal development. I've coached on personal development for over 12 years. Andy Andrews, The Traveler's Gift is the best book to start with if you've never done personal development. If you think personal development is dumb, you're not human. I apologize. That may be brass, but you're just not human. You got to personally develop. I don't care if you're in sales, analytics, IT, whatever it may be, doctors, lawyers, they always personally develop. Those are the best. They're always the ones that are always trying to grow. And thirdly, always ask questions. Never be afraid to ask a question, right? There's no such thing as a dumb question. There's just dumb people that don't want to ask questions. They're not dumb because like the negative term, but they're dumb because why would you not ask somebody who's excelling, ask them questions? So those are the 3 things that I would do in coming into space, coming into sales. The last thing is you just have to have a short memory. You're going to get yelled at, cussed at, hung up on. You have good days, you have bad days, but short memory, right? Hang up the phone, figure out somebody else and pick it up, and then go from there. So that's what I got a million things that you could do, but those would be the biggest takeaways that I would do.
Yeah, great pieces of advice that I'm sure has brought a lot of value to our listeners today and our audience. So thank you so much, Cameron. And I wanted to say thank you so much for being on our show today. Where can everyone find you online to connect with you?
Professionally, you can go to my LinkedIn page. It's just Cameron Gilmore. You can always ask me questions. I'm always willing to give information, right? Instagram, I spend most of the time on Instagram. Mixed Tribe Dad, so MIXED TRIBE Dad is the one we have. It's I do a lot to promote a blending of families, divorced couples, mixed families, and so forth. So those are two of the really easiest ways to get a hold of me.
Yeah, awesome. And to our audience, for more information on the Data Standard, you can find us at www.datastandard.io. Thank you so much, Cameron, for joining us. It was so great to hear more about your line of work, and we really appreciate your time today. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. Keep up the great work.